Well, hello and welcome to episode 12 of Studio 8.1, the first of 2022. You may notice that my co-host, Mr. Jarvis Todd, has vanished. Our first Zoom technical hitch of the year. I'm Paul Skeldon. I'm the editor at Telemedia News. And I did take a few weeks off over the Christmas period, but I'm back having analysed and assessed all that's going on. We have some interesting things, I think, to look forward to in 2022, which I shall discuss with my learned colleague, Mr. Todd, once he returns into the virtual world. So this is the downside of the metaverse. It's all very well and good and exciting. I very much like the metaverse, but of course you lose people. Here he is. He's back after a stupendously good start there.
Can you hear me at the back?
Absolutely. We can hear you, see you, fully experience you.
Well, there you go.
I have done an introduction. I've touched on most of the subjects we're going to be talking about. I think we've covered all we probably need to. Oh, now my phone's ringing.
Right, okay. So
going off.
Welcome everyone to the first Studio 8.1 vodcast of 2022. As you can probably tell, we're all a little bit out of practice. I pressed the wrong button just as we were about to go live and managed to disconnect myself. But I guess that's something that we've all experienced and you know, something that most service providers that are looking to do video services should probably be aware of. Anyway, Paul, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, sir. Did you have a good one?
It was lovely, yeah. Me and the other 3 and 4 kilograms that I've put on have all enjoyed the.
Absolutely. It was good, wasn't it? It was nice to have a break. Nice to sort of bit of downtime.
It was, but I noticed from the amount of content that's been appearing on Telemedia online, you haven't had a lot of downtime, mate. It's been pretty busy, hasn't it?
Well, it kept it going. There was still quite a lot of stuff happening, coming in, plus a lot of predictions and nice, easy reading stuff over a mince pie or two from various expert sources, some of which we'll touch on today.
We will. Well, let me tell you about that. I mean, just for those that don't know, Telemedia online news and magazine are edited by Paul Skeldon. If you don't receive them, you probably also should renew your subscription, which is free for qualified readers at telemediaonline.co.uk. Anyone that's interested in value-added services, premium content, mobile marketing, mobile payments, cybersecurity, anti-fraud, all of those good things. That's what we're about. And today we are going to cover a couple of the highlight stories from the past couple of weeks, which has been picked out by Paul. We're going to start off with a mobile all the way theme. We're going to reference some data from those very clever people over at App Annie who have produced some eye-watering figures for us to talk about. We're then going to move into the realms of payments, and our friends at Juniper have also put together some predictions for 2022 with some even more eye-watering figures, this time focusing more on e-commerce. And we're also going to touch on something I think is going to get mentioned a lot more over the coming year, and that is opportunities with open banking and how that and the mobile technologies that our industry have been championing, how they're coming together and offering payment solutions, which I think are going to be kicking a lot of arse in 2022. We can say arse because it's our vodcast, so who cares? But sorry to anyone that was offended by that. We're also then going to talk about 5G and networks, an ever developing saga, I think, in terms of networks, but there is always the opportunity that 5G could come along and really transform the fortunes of the networks. And we're going to be talking about what that could mean for the industry. And there's a very large feature that Paul picked out from Spirent Communications, And we're going to talk a little bit about how that's going to affect or potentially could affect the VAS markets, and all things connected to telemedia. We're going to then touch on a couple of events that we've got planned for the very near future. And we might just finish up with a little summary of what Paul's got planned for the next issue of Telemedia magazine, which is going to be coming out beginning of March. So let's crack on.
A new catchphrase for a new year.
Gotcha. So listen, the first story reads as follows. Mobile cements its dominance with 3.8 trillion hours spent on devices in 2021. Social gaming, dating, and retail were the clear winners. And as I said earlier, this is from a State of Mobile 2021 report by those clever people at App Annie. Paul, headlines, sort of nuggets?
Well, yeah, it's a massive report, which you really need to sort of download and spend a few hours reading through. I've tried to do it justice by picking out the sort of highlights in the news story that's on the Telemedia website. There'll be more on this in the next issue of the magazine, which we'll come to later on. But yes, App Annie have analysed how people all over the world use apps and have concluded some quite startling and as you say, eye-watering things about mobile usage. 3.8 trillion hours being used by mobile first consumers. I mean, who isn't these days? They've downloaded 230 billion apps and have spent $170 billion worldwide on mobile. That's just the key headline findings. And within that, I mean, like I say, there's so much, we can't really do it justice here, but social is by far the runaway success. 70% of all minutes spent on mobile are spent doing social, which includes looking and sharing photos and videos, as well as just sort of interacting and finding stuff, which I think is no surprise to anyone. I think what is surprising is that TikTok and Instagram are really sort of pulling ahead as the sort of key social sites that consumers are using. I think you're going to see a lot more of sort of e-commerce now starting to take place through social platforms. Gaming, of course, huge. Not that anyone really needs to be told that. Bringing in $116 billion of revenue, which is massive. A lot of it are games platforms like Roblox, which are starting to become part, excuse me, part of the sort of putative metaverse that everyone's talking about, which is something we'll come to in a little while about. That's going to be a big thing, I think, in 2022, and something that telemedia providers need to spend a little bit of time working out how we can make some money out of the metaverse. Beyond games, mobile commerce, which is so e-commerce through mobile, another clear winner. Retailers are particularly seeing a lot of sales now and interaction through mobile. It's becoming the sort of platform of choice for a lot of people shopping. 100 billion hours globally spent in retail apps, according to App Annie. Again, probably no surprise to anyone, but I think it does paint the picture that mobile is really just sort of where everybody is. And that's where, you know, all your marketing and sort of sales opportunities to go, and all the predictions and assessments we've got of what 2022 has in store that we're going to touch on in this podcast, all really center around this kind of mobile first world that we now live in. Some of the other key things, video streaming, of course, is massive. YouTube, Netflix, everything. You know, that's the way to do it. And interestingly, buried sort of further down in the App Annie report is dating. Dating apps have done extraordinarily well, hitting more than $4 billion in 2021, a 95% increase in revenue through dating apps since 2018. Yeah. So I think that's partly because people have been locked down, shut in. It's the only way they can sort of meet people. But it's really become sort of, you know, a very mainstream and high revenue business, even higher than it ever was. Yeah, which I think for our telemedia audience, all those things together are all things they're experiencing. But I think it's quite interesting that dating has become such a significant part, along with social media. And I think how these things work together is going to be a hot topic for 2022.
Yeah, no, I agree. Dating is definitely going to be one to watch, and that's certainly been accelerated by the restrictions from COVID. And interestingly enough, I remember going to a dating conference which was hosted by Google, and they actually done some research into how millennials were viewing online dating. And in fact, they consider or a large proportion of them already consider that they've had a proper date if they've had some kind of FaceTime on mobile. So they consider that to be a proper date, in the mobile universe rather than actually in the real world. So when you've got that level of uptake from the that target group, the all important millennials, and you combine that with 2 years of restricted face-to-face contact, I think there's no surprise that dating is really going to emerge this year. And as you say, it's been a core service for the telemedia industry for quite a long time. So I would imagine that that's going to be good news for quite a lot of telemedia service providers, aggregators, merchants, and brands. And I'm sure that we'll be reporting more on some dating success stories over the next couple of years. In fact, you've got your own dating success story.
I have. Yes, I am engaged to be married. Betrothed. So yes, that was a little treat for my other half on New Year's Eve. At the stroke of midnight, I creaked down onto one knee.
Well,
and thankfully she said yes. Otherwise, I'd have, because I did need help getting back up again. Congratulations,
man. How could she turn down the 44th most important man in mobile? I mean,
absolutely. I've also since the 44th most important man in mobile, I have also been widely quoted in the Iranian media about the Metaverse, where I appear to be something of an expert on the Metaverse, particularly in Iran.
Oh, so right. Okay.
The CIA are watching. Obviously, I haven't given away anything that's not already publicly available.
Excellent. Should we move on to the next story, mate?
Let's.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about payments. As you know, this has always been, I suppose, the epicenter of all things telemedia, being an industry that has been able to extract payment or billing from a consumer that is not directly connected with the merchant. And of course, that has meant that we've been at the center of digital commerce and at the center of the sales and marketing and distribution of digital collateral, digital services, digital content. So obviously now in the wider world, with all sorts of different payment mechanisms, we talk about e-commerce quite generally, I think. And this next story focuses on that. And it reads, e-commerce payments to exceed 7.5 trillion by 2026, thanks to omnichannel retail. This comes from our good friends at Juniper Research in a recent report entitled E-commerce Payments, Emerging Trends, Opportunities and Market Forecasts 2022 to 2026. And there's a link to that on our vodcast page. Headlines are: the value of global e-commerce payment transactions will exceed 7.5 trillion by 2026 from 4.9 trillion in 2021. That's quite a leap. This growth rate of 55% over the next 5 years will be driven by retailers offering compelling omni-channel retail experiences that increase user e-commerce spend. Now, I think over the past, if you go back 5 years, there was a sort of a nod from telemedia to retail, primarily because most of the payment mechanisms that were dominant within the telemedia sector were not really ideal for physical goods, and so consequently there's always been a bit of a disconnect. We're going to talk about why that's not the case a little bit in the next story, but I think the two worlds are coming much closer together, and I think e-commerce, m-commerce is very much a telemedia stalwart now. So what were your takeaways from this one?
I thought this was interesting because, as you say, we've sort of slowly and sort of by stealth been increasingly sort of talking about e-commerce, and particularly retail e-commerce within telemedia. And I think sort of if you go back to the previous story about what App Annie found, I think this whole sort of increasing use of mobile and the fact that retailers are using it and where they're increasingly selling stuff, and the increased use of social media and gaming, you're starting to see that, spend online is just going up and up and up. Now, yes, physical goods aren't necessarily something that carrier billing can always tap into. I suspect that might change in the coming years. But I think as part of this wider sort of view of how people use mobile and buy things, particularly this idea of the metaverse, where people are going to start to buy virtual goods in virtual worlds, it does present an opportunity for carrier billing because it's all digital. We've already seen our friends at Reality Clash looking at sort of selling items, via sort of blockchain to use in their games and things. I know they're interested in the carrier billing model as a way of sort of getting people to quickly buy stuff. I think we're going to see a lot more of that as this sort of digital social media metaverse interactive world takes off. There's a whole virtual world of e-commerce out there. These Juniper figures are for sort of real world e-commerce, and they're really impressive. And I think it does show that sort of mobile payments and digital payments are a massively interesting subject. And I think while we focused on carrier billing at Telemedia, we have to also look at the fact that there are lots of other billing tools, and these are going to start to become useful to telemedia services also, which we'll come to in a moment. But I think there's also, on the other hand, there's this virtual metaverse world taking off where carrier billing also has a massive potential opportunity. So I think altogether 2022 is going to be quite a significant year for digital payments, and I think we are going to see some of that spill over into carrier billing. I think we're also going to see telemedia companies start to adopt other payment methods, much like the pay by bank.
Well, yes, before we get to that, I just wanted to also ask you to sort of give your view on this whole idea of omnichannel, because it's a phrase which I think we're going to hear a lot. And I know that I was talking to James at MEF, and there seems to be lots of people that will, or lots of companies that talk about omnichannel but don't really mean it, and others that are doing omnichannel and it is properly omnichannel. I mean, what are your views on, what it really is? How does it really work? And how's it going to impact the telemedia industry, or how should the telemedia industry be looking at this sort of concept strategy over the next sort of 12 months?
Well, I think there's two things. There's omni-channel and multi-channel, and I think a lot of people get mixed up between the two. Multi-channel is sort of selling and operating over a range of different channels. Now that's going to be digitally and physically in retail, but real shops, digital shops, mobile, social media, all these things. I think where it becomes omni-channel is where that experience is completely tied together. So it doesn't matter which channel you're using, you get the same experience, even though it's an experience tailored to that channel, and that you can hop between them. You can start your shopping journey on mobile, end up buying it in a shop, arranging for it to be taken away because it doesn't fit via website, that sort of thing. Now, I think that's where retail particularly is going. I think because that's the sort of consumer experience that people will be used to, everything will go into an omni-channel world. Now, you take, say, for example, dating that we were talking about before, that's going to become omni-channel. I think it's largely going to be driven by mobile. I think all of these omni-channel things are going to be mobile first, but there are also going to be people who are going to check their sort of dating status on their computer in the office once they make it back to the office, or they're going to look at it on their phone. I think eventually they're going to possibly even inquire from their smart speaker, of things like what's happening.
Who am I meeting tonight, Alexa?
That kind of thing. Yes, that exactly. I think they might even do it through their TV. So I think all these things are going to come together. And what's significant for telemedia about omnichannel is that, one, sort of value-added services need to be created so that they are omnichannel, so that they offer something through all of these touch points where that's relevant. And I think it has a big impact on payments, because it's how do you make the payment side of it work in a seamless way in an omni-channel environment. And I think We're already sort of seeing some tentative explorations of how to use carrier billing. Carrier billing actually lends itself quite well to some of these omni-channel experiences. I mean, I don't know if anyone sort of has signed up to Disney Plus. You know, you can gain access to Disney Plus and Netflix. Actually, you can also do it using your mobile phone. It ties your TV and your phone together over your Wi-Fi network, and you use the phone as security to get into the TV. I think you're going to see the same for payments on things like TV and on smart speakers. It's going to be that your phone is almost that sort of little payments interface, like a little payments machine that you'll do to pay for everything in stores, online, on your smart speakers, on your TV, on whatever they think of next. And I hate to keep banging on about the metaverse, but I think it's going to be pivotal to that as well, because it's going to be, mobile's a technology that you can appear in your virtual headset world. You can interact with it, you can pay using it while you're doing something else. I think it's going to be really significant in gaming, particularly, that you'll use your virtual mobile in your virtual world to pay for those virtual goods. How the payment's done is then up to the consumer. It might be carrier billing, it might be pay by bank, it might be a card transaction, who knows? So I think that's why it's significant to telemedia. I think the other thing that's happening across all of e-commerce, and particularly omni-channel, is to make the payments as frictionless as possible. So any payment mechanism that's really easy and really quick and involves virtually no sort of input from the user, other than perhaps their face or their thumbprint, they're going to be the winners. And I think, again, DCB is quite a low friction way of paying, or it can be once it's set up properly. I think allying that with sort of facial recognition and things like that could make it even more powerful. I think as payment tools get this sort of frictionless idea going, they'll be the ones that are successful.
Well, I tell you what, if that wasn't an audition for a keynote speech at Tehran Telecom 2022,
absolutely.
I don't know what was.
Ted's Tehran, here I come.
So talking of, or moving on from that and talking about payment mechanisms, and I think, it's important to say that, whilst I think DCB is very close to the heart of anyone that's a sort of traditional telemedia player, we've been talking about mobile payments far more generically for quite a long time, and even mobile authentication. And what we've seen over the last, I think, 12 months, but it's particularly interesting that since the summer, 3 or 4 people independently have come up to me and said, "Are you covering mobile open banking?" And of course, we started talking about it back in the summer with the Democo deal. It seems as though it's really taking off in Germany, and this next story takes it one stage further. And it reads: Toolstation becomes the largest e-commerce retailer to offer pay by bank to customers as payment landscape shifts. DIY and tool retailer Toolstation is partnering with EcoSpend, a leading UK provider of open banking technologies, to become one of the largest e-commerce sites to adopt pay by bank technology as a payment alternative. So, initially, you might not realize why this is a good news telemedia story, but I think once you've heard Paul's take on this, you'll realize that open banking and mobile phones are very much bedfellows, and I think we're going to see some huge not just retail but digital payment opportunities arising from this match made in heaven. Talk us through it, Paul.
Well, I think pay by bank, like you say, which is essentially instant bank transfers, which we've sort of been covering for a year or so. It's like peer-to-peer payments, but I can transfer money to you via a sort of banking app. You can now do it to pay for things. It's been it's quite popular in Germany to some degree. As you said, we reported on Democo and SignD doing a deal in Germany to offer these sort of pay by bank, instant bank transfer stuff back in April of last year. There's been some other developments since with all sorts of open banking companies. These open banking companies are sort of new entrants into the banking world. So they're not the sort of traditional banks who are sort of fairly monolithic and slow to move. Though I think that's going to change. They're small startups who've come up with interesting new ways to offer payment services or banking services or a bit of both. mostly mobile first. And one of the key areas that has come out of this sort of this ability to offer open banking is that you can offer this sort of very rapid account to account payment. Now, I think it's really significant because it is one of the most friction-free ways of paying, and it's really easy to do, and it's really secure. And I think it's going to become really popular. Now, I don't want to be a naysayer or a doom monger, but it might be the thing that possibly replaces carrier billing, because I think it can offer all that carrier billing can do, and with a probably slightly better payout. But who knows? I think there'll be horses for courses.
Well, I mean, interesting you should say that, because I was discussing this with Andrew at Cute Media this very week. And there are some limitations. I don't think at this point it's particularly good at doing subscription services and repeat.
No.
Which is obviously a model that is very much in favor with our industry, and and consumers like it too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, there are, but there are limitations currently. I think for some things, for one-off sort of payments, it's this pay by bank idea has got real sort of good legs actually. And also it works in the physical and digital worlds equally. The one thing is it's not as well known. It's probably less well known than carrier billing sort of. So it's got some way to go, but I think it's an interesting thing. I think it's something we're going to see a lot more of this year, but I think we'll see the sort of payment aggregators and providers start to offer this as well alongside carrier billing and all the other payment sort of services that they offer. It'll just become another way to pay, and I think, as I say, it'll be suited to some things and not to others. Carrier billing will find its niches. Hopefully there's room for everyone. What I think is interesting is that we're probably going to move to a world where we're not doing tapping in credit card numbers and all that kind of thing ever again now. I think that era is over. We are going to be using these much faster, friction-free ways of paying for stuff.
And that is one of the reasons why I think we're seeing continuing growth forecasts for e-commerce, for DCB, for the digital economy in general. Is fundamentally the ease of payment is one of the keys, right?
Absolutely.
One of the things that we probably need to do now is move on to 2022 predictions. We talked about, we do this every year. We had a little summary at the end of last year and we did pretty well. Not too many surprises, but this year you've picked out a very meaty feature, which I'm currently looking at on Telemedia Online, which has been put together by Spirent Communications, a guy called Stephen Douglas, head of 5G strategy. And they have outlined what they think is in store for 5G. And what you have done, Paul, is I think you've extracted a couple of points here, whereby 5G, we've been talking about it now for a long time. And every year I think we have is this the year for 5G? And it's this year it's really going to kick off. You think it is. And I think this feature suggests that there's every reason to believe that this is the year. And I think more specifically, it's now time to look at the kinds of services that are really going to be enhanced by a robust 5G network with lots of people using it. And you picked out 3 or 4 obvious telemedia value-added services, I think. So what were your thoughts on their predictions?
Well, I think it sort of ties neatly back into where we started with App Annie's sort of mobile findings. I think what 5G enables everyone to do as a consumer is just do all of the things that we do, only much better. So it is going to underpin, I think, an explosion in video services. So there'll be more Zooming, there'll be more video calling, there'll be more live video selling, there'll be live sort of customer service interaction. All that sort of thing is going to increasingly have a video component, which we're going to see a lot more of, all thanks to 5G. I think it's going to revolutionize gaming, because again, this dynamic spectrum sharing idea that slices up the sort of capacity means you can do so much more at a higher bandwidth, which means gaming can be globally interactive and really high quality. I think that's also going to drive the metaverse, where we all don our Oculus headsets and interact with everything virtually. I think it's also going to drive an even bigger increase in the Internet of Things. So everything is going to be connected to the network. I think in some ways not all IoT devices are going to use 5G. They'll use the 3 and 4G network spectrum that's freed up by more consumers using 5G for other things, but it's still a driver. And I think we're also going to see a lot more rollout of these private 5G networks, so in stadium networks and even within apartment blocks and offices and things like that. They're going to start to use private sort of local area 5G networks to do stuff because it's so fast and works in theory so well. So I think there's a lot of work still to be done, but I think it is going to be the year of 5G. We're going to see more and more things just sort of relying on the fact that the network has got this sort of capacity to deliver all sorts of things. And I think it'll be a gradual shift. But already, I don't know, a lot of phone calls I make, I don't know about you, are video ones. I mean, it's almost sort of, it's unusual now just to sort of like make a phone call.
Yeah, weird,
and that's just going to be everywhere. And I think, like, when you phone up your bank to talk to someone about whatever, there'll be a video option, there'll be a live chat option that's video. You'll have all sorts of things going on enabled by this network connectivity. The downside is that the networks have to make sure that it's everywhere. Currently, as I drive around out here in the countryside, a lot of the time I don't have 5G, but I'm sure eventually that will come. And yeah, it's going to underpin, I think, most of the other things that we're going to see developing through 2022.
Yeah. But I think the interesting thing as well is that that along with this explosion of new services and more bandwidth and all that kind of thing, we're also going to end up talking about the environmental issues there that will, sure to rear its ugly head. Well, ugly if you're not being environmentally friendly, of course. So that's going to be an interesting one as well, isn't it? Because I think the industry is going to be faced with the dilemma of the more customers are using more bandwidth, are consuming more data, are uploading more services. As we talked about at the end of last year, there is a cost to that, environmental cost. So that's going to be something that I think will, as a result of increased uptake of 5G, will also become an issue that we're going to see raised across the industry. Well, look, I mean, I think we've probably taken far too much of everyone's time. It is the new year, and I don't know about you, Paul, but I think there's a couple of things going on in our world that we ought to just
absolutely
get off this call, this Zoom, this vodcast, and get back to work on. But we ought to just tell people what we're up to. First things first, the next edition of Telemedia Magazine, the first issue of the year, is going to be launched at Mobile World Congress on the 28th of February. What key takeaways from that one? What are you looking forward to writing about in that issue, Paul?
Well, it's already underway, and it's many of the things that we've discussed here, but it's going to primarily be about the how mobile first is now everything, and really from that, all the things that come out of that. So how that's going to drive growth and development in CPaaS, how it's going to change the use of messaging, like I said, into more use of video. I think we're going to see new ways of doing old things. Are we going to see SMS alerts and things? Are we going to get flash calls? There's all that sort of thing. I'm going to look in more depth at some of these things you can do with 5G, particularly private networks, and what the opportunities there are there for running those and for running services over them. Because I think although they're private, a lot of the sort of value-added service things that people sell using telemedia can be sold privately to users here as well. I'm going to look also at developments in messaging, how more and more of it is over-the-top messaging and what that means. And I am going to dabble, as is probably anyone who's been listening to all the way through, I'm going to dabble in the metaverse and some of the opportunities that might lie therein. There'll be plenty more. There's lots of predictive stuff of what the year ahead holds, which I think will be interesting reading at Mobile World Congress, because I think you can sort of see what we're predicting and what then is being exhibited and sold out there, and hopefully the two will match up. Hopefully you'll have some interesting questions to ask some of the vendors once you're there. So yes, all good stuff, and that will be out, as you say, at Mobile World Congress at the end of February.
Great, thank you very much. And a quick reminder to anyone out there, if you haven't subscribed within the last year, we do need you to renew simply go to telemediaonline.co.uk and hit the subscribe button. It will be free to qualified readers. We know who you are, and as long as you're in our world, we'd be very happy to send you a copy. But you can also get the digital version online, and you can also subscribe to our bi-monthly newsletter as well. Just a final point, we've got a few slots left in our supplier directory. So we've got a fantastic silver package, which gets you across all our media channels for a mere £500 for a quarter. That's 3 months for £500. Yes, you heard it here first. Please drop me a line if you're interested in taking us up on that. And finally, hot off the press, the big news is that hashtag unofficial Mobile World Congress is back. You've heard the rumors. We've been working very hard behind the scenes. We've been gauging the industry's appetite to do what was a very popular event in 2020. This time, of course, it is going on during Mobile World Congress. I think in many ways there has been pushback from the many areas of the industry with regards to Mobile World Congress. It does, not for me to knock it, but I think that it is so generic and so general and so huge that I think a lot of people have found it very unwieldy and a rather impractical way of being able to find the people that they specifically want to meet. So what we are doing is we're giving everyone an opportunity to hang out in a very cool central Barcelona venue. It's actually a converted, one of the oldest breweries in Barcelona. It's a magnificent building. So
have you actually organised a piss up in a brewery?
Yeah, I know. It was kind of we'll wait and see. It's a wonderful venue. We're going to be hosting formal networking lunches where everyone can kind of get together and just and have a bit of an icebreaker. We're then going to have an afternoon and evening of meat market tabletops, a little bit like we do at the beginning of World Telemedia. So branded meeting spaces and sort of a pop-up exhibition, if you like. That will obviously be followed by lashings of Michelin star food and cocktails. And there will also be drinks as well. So the main focus on the 28th of February will be in that venue. Details will be announced in the next few days. And I believe that it's going to be free for premium subscribers of Telemedia 8.1. So if you have not renewed your subscription to to Telemedia 8.1, please go and do that now, and you will get a free invitation to 8.1 Live Barcelona. The second day, we will be a little bit like last time, networking around various venues, a little bit more, let your hair down, a bit more, even more fun. But 28th of February, put that in your diaries. And if you're interested in getting involved, please do drop me a line. Paul, I think we've got so much to do. We need to get off this darn vodcast and go to work.
Get on and make it happen. Absolutely. Unofficial or fun official Mobile World Congress. I like it. Well, excellent. Yeah. Well, yes, I'll need to go away and beaver away and produce this magazine that everyone can read and sound even more knowledgeable when they get there.
Exactly.
So yes, we shall reconvene in a couple of weeks and see what else we've got to talk about then.
Thank you very much for your time, mate, and
always a pleasure.
Have a great holiday in Tehran.
Yeah, exactly. Holiday. Yes.
See you later, everybody. Thanks very much.
Take care, everyone.
In a couple of weeks' time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.